So I'm sitting here in my office at Remax Kelowna, and I'm chatting it up with Dr. Graham Jenkins, who works as a chiropractor here in Kelowna. And Graham treats my girlfriend, my business partner, Kara, and several of my clients and my colleagues. I'm just getting to know Dr. J, as I like to call him, but I'm excited to get to know him better. First of all, Dr. J, thank you for coming on the show today. I know you're an extremely busy guy, and I really appreciate your time. So I want to give you a platform to tell us about your fascinating life and your business. So, Dr. J, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how long you've been a chiropractor?
Well, thanks, Luke. I really appreciate the opportunity to share. It's my first official podcast, so maybe you're entering me into this brand new world of podcasting, so I'm excited about that. I've actually been a chiropractor since 1995. I'm an Ontario guy, so went to school in Toronto, did my undergrad in UWO, Western, for anybody that's back from Ontario, they recognize that right away. And then I did another 3 years at Canadian Memorial Chiropractic studying sports chiropractic, and got out and started working with some pro athletes and realized I didn't like working with athletes, or not at that level anyway. They just don't listen. So my focus really has been family practice, and we moved up to a small town in Ontario. Actually, it was the town I was born and raised in, Bancroft. When my mom was having some health issues. And, we were there for 14 years. And so we built this big, it was a fun practice, little country town practice. And we were seeing all sorts of people, from little babies. People would literally bring their babies in on the way home from the hospital to get them checked, all the way right up to, great-grandparents. You get people in their 80s and even 90s. So I tell you, when you're in a small town like that, you learn to think on your feet, and there's not a lot of resources like there are in a city like Kelowna. So, it was a good run. But, man, when we found Kelowna, it was just a matter of time. So it took us 3 or 4 years to sell that practice, but we came out here in 2008, and, this will be our 10th year anniversary in Kelowna. So pretty exciting stuff.
Nice. So you, I'm guessing you came here for a vacation at some point. You fell in love with the city, and then you thought about moving out here, and it took 3-4 years to get that done. Is that right?
Yeah. It wasn't quite a vacation. It was kind of a working vacation. There was a conference at the Delta back when it was, before it was the Delta, right? Back the Okanagan Grand. Just all it took was one run along the waterfront and looking to the left, seeing this gorgeous city, looking to the right, seeing this beautiful lake, going, yeah, I think we could live here. So the nature of a chiropractic clinic is you really want to make sure that you've got a doc that can take over, that's kind of similar style, similar personality. And so, I found a young guy that was a new grad, interesting guy. He used to actually play goalie in the AHL, so kind of an interesting story. But he was just from another little town about 2 hours away from the community we were in. So he kind of was used to the culture, wanted to be in small town Ontario. So it was a really good fit, and he's still practicing there today, the same practice. And he lost one of my team members this last year because he retired, but he's still got the same front desk CA, or chiropractic assistant. So it's good to hear about the successes back there, because when you grow something up, it's your baby, right? And you really want to make sure that your people are well looked after. We develop some pretty cool relationships with people. We just want to make sure they're in good hands. So he's done a great job, and we were sad to leave, professionally, but for our family and our kids growing up, man, you can't beat the Okanagan. It's just blow your mind amazing. Yeah. Right.
So I'm curious about your profession. I have not had, I think I had one chiropractic treatment once, like 10 years ago. And I believe it has to do with posture. And you mentioned babies actually come to you for treatment, which kind of surprised me because I don't think of babies having posture issues. I think they're kind of a blob that's just sitting there. So what can you do for a baby? And tell us a little bit about what chiropractic is and how it benefits people.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. You've kind of opened up a massive question for me, but I'll try to keep it simple. Let's address the kids in chiropractic question first, because that does, for someone they haven't grown up with chiropractic or not familiar with it. There's a lot of conditions that babies suffer with and young kids suffer with that chiropractic has had some really neat results. And so I always joke with people, I say, this is where the conversations over the fence in the backyard get a little bit funky, because most people think chiropractic, neck pain, back pain. And then when your neighbor says, oh yeah, my baby was having colic for like 6 weeks and we were, it was driving us crazy, nobody was sleeping. We took them to this chiropractor and like after one adjustment, just everything changed. And so again, it's chiropractic really is not about going after back pain or neck pain. It's about freeing the nerve system, getting rid of the nerve system off of that delicate, or the spine off that delicate nerve system, So one of the most traumatic events that we have to go through is the birth process, Now it's getting a lot better with the introduction of midwifery and kind of more home births. And again, for a lot of people, that's just radical thinking, a home birth. But, more gentle approaches, just kind of giving the mom the time to have the baby rather than kind of the stopwatch. We got to be to this point at a certain time. So it's better than it was when I first graduated. So, 25 years ago, it was pretty on the clock, and there was some pretty nasty, stories, not that there aren't still some pretty crazy stories with birth. But yeah, so we want to do, again, a really gentle spinal evaluation, just to make sure everything's cool. Just kind of like your first checkup at the dentist. Just make sure there's nothing funky going on. And if there is, then it's a pretty easy fix, because those little delicate bones, they're not even bone yet. They're just cartilage. So it's more about just a kind of a gentle coaxing rather than, when you think about the 220-pound, athlete that comes in, we're not going to use the same kind of adjustments, right? It's a completely different, kind of like the difference between how a pediatrician would approach a case versus, any other type of doctor. We've got specialized training. Well, those of us who work with kids have got training that will enable us to be very, very specific and accurate with those kids. So I think I answered your question. Yeah. Because chiropractic's really about the nerve system, making sure that everything that the brain is saying to the body is actually getting out to the organ systems. And we do a really good job with back and neck pain. We've sort of been pigeonholed into that. But I really like to try to graduate people more to a wellness, a lifestyle orientation towards their chiropractic, because we all want to live a long and healthy life. Right. That's the whole point. We're not working this hard today. We put our investments away. We, try to raise our kids up right, so we like hanging around them when they're 30. We try to do all these things kind of in the moment, but a lot of times people don't even know they're supposed to be looking after their spine and nerve system like you do your teeth. Dentists have done a great job saying, listen, if you don't brush and floss your teeth are going to rot and drop out of your head. And it's not the dentist's fault, right? Like, it's just, normal oral hygiene. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help my people understand what normal, adequate spinal hygiene would be, so that they can still swing a golf club, they can still, hit their overhand or their forehand on the tennis court, or just even bend over and pick up their grandkids, so they can enjoy their retirement.
Right. That's fascinating. I didn't even imagine that it could help with things like colic. My two daughters had colic briefly, not for a long time, but it's really hard to sleep, as you mentioned, but it's also heartbreaking, because to see your child suffer, you want to comfort them, and you can't do anything. And so that's really good to know. Yeah. I think people would be surprised to hear that, I think. We just thought there was nothing you could do. I mean, herbal remedies and, cuddling the child and stuff like that. But And I'm wondering if you've ever had a case like me, like I've got intermittent vocal issues, and maybe it's got something to do with that, because some days I feel great and other days it flares up. So I should come and see you. You never know, right? And tell us some of the other benefits, like besides neck and back pain, what are some of the other benefits that people get when they're chiropractic, their spinal issues are sorted?
Again, that's a bit of a loaded question. And I just want to back up a little bit too, because, we talk about colic, and another thing that we see a lot with kids too is kind of the chronic recurrent ear infections. We're not going after those conditions, and I think that's where people have maybe, thought, chiropractic, these guys are like snake oil salesmen. They say they can do everything, right? It's really about tone on that nervous system and kind of coming back to kind of the vocal issues. Like, yeah, who knows? We do a checkup. We see if that area of the spine that supplies that part of your body is impacted. And we know that it's part of the conversation. And that's what I'm always saying. I'm saying, yeah, there's great nutritional, herbal exercise, simple things like that really help with a lot of the conditions that we help with. But we also stay in our lane and we say, we're nerve system specialists. We're going to free that nerve system up, and let's do that and see how the body heals, because it has this incredible ability to heal. We just need to remove the interference off the system. So the back pain, the neck pain, a lot of the radiating pains that we see, so people that wake up in the middle of the night and, their hands are numb or and they kind of shake that out, people just sort of ignore that stuff, but that's a big red flag for us that they're actually moving into possibly some early onset arthritis or some nerve compression at the neck. Same thing, the sciatic, the radiating pain down the legs. Obviously the musculoskeletal stuff, but we also work a lot with naturopaths and nutritionists for folks that have seemingly done everything with their nutrition. Just had a gal that was really frustrated, and it just kind of came up in conversation that she was having some GI issues, and gastrointestinal. Right. Sorry, yeah. So lower bowel stuff was going on. So we decided to actually take an x-ray and see how that disc space was doing that surrounds the nerves that go to the GI. And sure enough, she'd lost about half the natural height of her disc. We did something called a Denerol table. It's a really kind of specific type of spinal traction to decompress the nerves. It was so funny. She works in the buildings I work in, and she came running up to me. We were doing this kind of landmark sidewalk event, and I was thinking, what's going on? There must be, and she's like, I have never felt so good. And, it just that kind of stuff. And who would have thought that after all the tests with the medical doctors, all the alternative docs that she saw, probably, thousands of dollars she spent. I can only imagine. And here it was, this silent compression on the nerves. Wasn't causing her any back pain at all, but it was choking off the nerves that were going to her lower bowel. And she's had kind of the best 4 weeks of her adult life, according to her, Now, that's our miracle story, and obviously those are the ones I remember. But, simple stuff like people, not having any back pain after they vacuumed through their whole house may not seem like a big deal to you and me, but man, there's some people that they're laid up after they clean their house for a while. And, it's just it's unnecessary. If there's things that we can do to help people, I want to be able to help them. So hopefully that explains that.
Yeah, that's great. So did you always want to be a chiropractor, like ever since you were a little kid, or was there something that happened that made you think, hey, this is the field of medicine or the, field of study that I want to get into?
Yeah, ironically, and this is kind of a funny story, and Luke can see me because we're sitting across the desk from each other, but I actually wanted to be a dentist when I first kind of got through school, high school, kind of, and then you're deciding to go off to university. But the size of my hands, I think that would just be cruel and unusual. We've got pretty big hands. And I think, honestly, we just had a really nice dentist in my hometown, and he was just a nice guy. So I thought, hey, you know what? He seems to have pretty good hours, and he drives a nice car and doesn't seem to be too stressed out. Maybe that wouldn't be a bad thing to do, you know? Yeah. So it's not like I was super passionate about dentistry. What ended up happening as I was in high school, I actually started to develop some pretty serious sciatic pain. And for, you know, a 17-year-old kid, that's not normal, you know. Well, it's not normal for anybody, but anyway. Finally, and we were a pretty medical family. Like, chiropractic was not kind of our go-to in our family, right? So I'd done the muscle relaxants, I'd done anti-inflammatories, but anytime I'd weight bear, and I was actually really working hard on trying to get into the university I eventually went to on a scholarship for volleyball. But every time I'd really kind of push it on the court, literally before the end of the first match, which was not long, I couldn't weight bear on that leg. So it didn't really help me out at all. And kind of the whole scholarship and just athletics just went out the window because I just couldn't perform, you know. So finally my mom said, well, why don't you just go to our, there's only one chiropractor in town at the time. And he had this little office and the upstairs and the stairs were creaky. It's just like kind of the worst imaginable office experience you could imagine. So I'm like going up these guys' stairs going, I don't know what this is all about. And the guy looked like he was about 6'8". He wasn't, but in my mind he was. And he laid me down on this old bench, and this noise that came out of my spine, I thought he killed me. But, you know, I got up off the table and I felt it right away, right? So it was one of those kind of one-shot wonder adjustments. It doesn't always happen. But yeah, and that made such a huge impact, you know, and I had to go back a few times, you know, and his model was very, you know, come back when you're broken again, you know, very acute care, no sort of maintenance or wellness or anything like that back then. But yeah, that started me. It wasn't, you know, the complete switch 100 degree or, you know, 180 degree then, but it started me thinking maybe there's more to this, you know. So by the time I kind of got through second year university, I was like, yeah, I'm doing the chiropractic thing, you know. And honestly, now that I know just about the whole body benefits of chiropractic, you know, I'm so glad that that's what I did. You know, it was one of those things I didn't know I was meant to do this, but, you know, hey, what do you know? I was one of those fortunate people that just stumbled into something that really, I'm just wired for it. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
very cool. And you mentioned at the beginning that you initially were treating athletes, and you decided to get away from that. You said they don't listen too well. So could you tell us a little bit about that? Like, how is your practice different from athletes, and what the problem is with athletes for you?
Yeah. I shouldn't say that because I actually do work with a few, but I've done some volunteer work. I've worked actually with some junior A hockey teams, and so I kind of joke about that, but yeah, definitely the pro level athlete. I was working with some runners with our national team back in Ontario, and again, yeah, they've got a lot of voices coming into their world, and so I can see why it's tough for them to really dial in on something and stick with it, because they've just got so many advisors and so many people that saying, oh, you should do this and you should do that. And again, the running world, unfortunately, back then in Ontario, there was a lot of doping going on. So it didn't really, it wasn't super attractive for me, you know. So maybe I just got a little bit jaded. But to me, it's kind of like one of those things, like you kind of learn something from it. And it actually, for me, it just set me on a much better path, you know. One of the big quotes that I actually enjoy, and I think of this a lot, but they credit to the Dalai Lama, but I'm sure lots of people have said it in different ways. It says, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. And that's kind of what I think, because, you know, you spend a lot of hours doing those fellowship programs and all that extra training, and you just kind of feel like you're dumping it. Oh, I'm not going to work with pro athletes anymore. But, you know, I learned a lesson, you know. And now when somebody comes in, you know, say Mrs. Smith comes in and she's screwed up her shoulder and maybe she's got a rotator cuff issue, I actually know what to do. I may not be the person that ultimately treats that. I'll be referring her off to a couple of physios that I work with in town, or I get her to the right person. But that's one of the things I always look back on. Man, if I hadn't have done all that sports training, I couldn't do the kind of assessment to help this person maybe miss a few other wasted time appointments trying to figure out what's going on. We can get them right to the person that's gonna help them out. And I'm a big believer in staying in my lane. I'm a spine nervous system guy. We've got some great physios in town that I refer out to all sorts of peripheral issues. We work with RMTs, like I said, the naturopaths and nutritionists. We've got actually a naturopath and a nutritionist in the office now. And so, yeah, I'm big on team. We're not going to do everything for every person by ourselves, but I am good at what I do, so I need to be part of the conversation. Yeah, good.
That's great. Yeah, I totally relate to that because for me, I have to give referrals all the time. So like mortgage professionals, legal professionals, and I know a bit about each. I actually had a mortgage broker license in Florida when I lived there. So it's really easy for me to refer to someone because I understand, right, the situation. So that's really cool. And I'm a big fan of stories that have to do with personal evolution. Like, I look back on who I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and sometimes I cringe. Sometimes I'm amazed, like, how far I've come. Can you think of a story from your past that if someone just met you today and you told them this story, they would be like, I don't believe that's Graham Jenkins. Like, I can't believe it. Can you think of something?
That's a tough one because then I have to admit some nasty stuff. But when we were, I say we because my wife and we got married in second year chiropractic school, so we were nuts. We kind of never been afraid to pull the trigger. That is for sure. So she was nursing at the time. I got her nursing degree. And so through first and second year, we were actually building a cedar strip canoe. On the weekends, we were up north. We were building a cedar strip canoe in my grandma's basement because nobody ever went down there, right? It was just like this, waste of storage of every magazine you could imagine for the last 60 years. So we, and it was beautiful, just unbelievable, because we really took our time, and my dad's really detail-oriented, so he'd help us anytime there was something that needed a little more attention. So we built this canoe, and then we decided, it was kind of second, third year, we decided to go on the French River. It's just a river between Lake Nipissing and dumps into Georgian Bay. And we knew nothing about whitewater, nothing, right? So we put in at the top of this river, which I don't recommend anyone doing this, put it in the top of this river, and immediately, like within 5 minutes, we're flipped, and we went over probably, it had to be 13 to 15 feet with a keeper at the bottom. So if anybody knows anything about whitewater, I learned a lot about whitewater after this. So literally, we lost everything. My wife got spit out one side of the river, fortunately, because you don't normally get out of these keepers. That's why they're called keepers. And so I don't know how long I was down there, but literally it's one of those kind of moments where you're like, yep, this is it. I got spit out the other one somehow, miraculously, only by the grace of God, I think. You come up from that, and first of all I'm doing is looking around for my wife just to see. And we had these really good life jackets, thankfully, probably what saved our lives. So we popped up. This cedar strip canoe is how massive the water forces were. It folded over and snapped in half. The guy who designed the hull, when he found that out, he said, I have had a train container fall on my boats when they've been he shipped quite a few boats back east, and they bounced. So that's the kind of force that these rivers generate, and anybody that knows whitewater knows that. So we almost died. We lost probably the best fishing gear I've ever purchased in my entire life, plus this beautiful cedar strip boat. That was kind of just absolutely idiotic, never do that again stuff, my near-death experience. So, so that's it.
So if you could go back in time and advise your younger self, or if you saw someone doing what you were doing, like what would you tell them to do differently? Like where was the mistake?
Get some training. And ironically, since then I've done some avalanche training and all that kind of stuff. And there's a reason they've got these courses, and there's a reason that you should get trained up properly before you head out into our great outdoors out there. And in Ontario, like we're talking small fry rivers compared to BC. Like I used to think that we were in this amazing, and we were. Ontario is gorgeous, right? Some of the spots up around Lake Superior, just absolutely beautiful. But man, the height of the mountains and the intensity of nature out in BC is just really, it's awe-inspiring. So yeah, even more in BC. Don't be an idiot. There's my...
Perfect. So in your career as a chiropractor, do you have any setbacks, or was it totally smooth sailing? Like, tell us maybe about one or two setbacks that you had and how you got past it, and. Yeah.
Oh no, never had any setbacks at all, Luke. I'm perfect. Yeah, if you believe that, yeah. No, probably the biggest setback I'd say was the shock value of coming into Kelowna. We had been, 14 years in Ontario. Built a really successful practice, tons of relationship, and we just really felt, we're just going to hit the ground running, and no problem. We did it once, we can do it again. Wow. Talk about, I call it professional whiplash. It was just unbelievable, just the retooling, the relearning about how, first of all, different generations, how they think about healthcare, our perceptions on how we worked with people and our expectations. So it probably took us a good 3 years, and I hit the books again, right? Like I was reading books about millennials, Generation X, all this kind of stuff, just how the culture has shifted, a lot of communication books on, how are people listening? I might be talking, but what are they perceiving and receiving, And so, yeah, just that was a bit of a shocker. Fortunately, we did know how to, and I say we because we're very team-oriented at the office. We just needed to get in step with this generation, learn a new communication style. And you know what? I'm not saying we've got it perfect, but I guess my aha from all of that was just never stop learning. And be super aware. For me, I needed to be way more aware of the environment that I was in, and then speak to that, not go, oh, why is everybody so, not getting this? It's like, no, how am I not communicating this? Because the principles still work. We're still dealing with human beings here. It's just I was talking, but nobody was understanding,
Right.
So, yeah. So that was probably my big kind of professional setback. And a bit of a shocker because I thought I had it figured out.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And you touched on it, but how do you get past a setback like that? Like you said, you started to study communications and really hit the books. When someone finds themselves in a professional setback, what do you advise them to do? Like just start studying, or how do you mentally get past it? Because you're in a situation. Do you just believe that you're going to get past it, or what do you? How do you make the mental shift between, okay, this is a problem, to I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to get past this.
Well, I think one thing that I can thank my folks for, my mom really drilled into me this unrealistic level of optimism, which my wife often reminds me of before I venture into something new. So I'm just kind of hardwired that I just like, it's going to work out somehow. But hey, there are mornings I wake up and I have this I'm pretty solid on my rituals. And again, I've hired coaches and done that kind of stuff too. So, this is not just my stuff. In fact, I have very, very few original thoughts. When I get up in the morning, I do like to listen probably about a half hour or so of just really solid encouragement, because, the world will beat that out of you so fast, So the stuff that I'm enjoying right now, like I've what's that? The book by Og Mandino from 1968, Greatest Salesman Ever.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great. So I got it out on audio. I'm a big Audible.ca guy. I have way more books than I probably should have. So I listen to that in the car or in my truck, and in the mornings. But I'm really stuck on that. I thought it would be just kind of like a 30-day sort of go through it all and kind of learn something. But it's probably been 6 months. And just a lot of the chapters, because if anybody's read that book, they know it's based on these scrolls and kind of this old story of this kind of sales mentor that has these 10 principles that you basically follow. And, the principles aren't anything, they're just like treat other people with respect, have self-respect, believe in your product, be ethical, just, simple stuff. But it's just kind of encouraging for me that way. So that kind of feeds that optimistic soul of mine, I'm a big believer in hiring coaches. And again, they don't have to be expensive. Maybe a coach could be a book, read a book. It doesn't have to be a $2,000 or $3,000, $4,000 weekend with raw, exciting stuff. That's great if you can afford it. But most of us, we've got other things that are that we got to focus on. And ask even people who might seem like they're my competition. I'll take them out for coffee. I'll ask them, how did this work? How did you make this work? It's surprising how you realize you don't really have a lot of competition out there when you start picking people's brains. And some of these people are great friends now. So people I kind of felt like I was at odds with, because whatever, they were in a similar kind of sphere. They're just so willing to share, So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, the books, the Audible, the rituals in the morning, just every day I got to get, because all this stuff leaks, right? Like by the time 6:30 in the night comes, I'm like, I suck, blah, blah, horrible day. But then, you start again the next morning, retool, reboot, get rolling. And again, I'm in a people business like you are, Luke, and I think too, just the moral imperative that I have, I'm serving people. But what I think people are the greatest asset on the planet. And so to me, it's more than just pumping out widgets. It's these people matter, and so I got to bring my A game to these people. And if I show up grumpy or, exhausted or just not, optimistic for them, how in the world are they going to get well? Right. It's just not going to happen, So, yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. That is such a great book, and I love it sounds like an old grandfather reading it. Yeah. And it was a book that really helped me when I was at a low point about 5-6 years ago. And like you said, it's nothing earth-shattering, but the way the stories are told, so the principles are put in the context of a story, right? So this happened to so-and-so when he was traveling on the road, and right? And so stories are great because they help us to remember the principles. And I think that one of the biggest things lacking for people is they don't take their mental diet seriously, right? Most people are aware that if you eat a lot of junk food over time, you're going to lose energy, you're going to get illnesses, you're going to create health problems. But we tend to not take what we're taking in mentally as seriously. We think we can just watch whatever, listen to whatever, and we're going to be happy and optimistic and sharp at our jobs. And it's just not the case. So I think that's really great advice, to start the day with something that is mentally nutritious and encouraging. I think that's great. So you obviously love your job. It shows. We meet every Thursday for breakfast, and we get 60 seconds to give a little pitch about our business, and you obviously love it. So tell us a little bit about what you love about being a chiropractor.
Well, I think I shared a little bit just in the stories of the people, right? So obviously, I'm really heavy results driven, right? So I love my numbers. I love the pre and post X-ray stuff. I love the pre and post posture. I love it when people say, I can do this and I couldn't do this before, or I feel that much younger. So I guess it's tough. Like, it would be pretty crazy with what I get to do every day. Like, I'd really have to have my head in the sand to not love what I do, right? Like, just and some days I just have to say, wake up, Graham. Just look around at what's going on. You're making a difference in people's lives, because, we have this kind of, every once in a while you get a grumpy patient. And I always tell my team, it's probably not about what we've done. It's probably the 7 things that have happened to them already in the day. So just kind of love on them and encourage them. Do the best you can, and they're still maybe going to leave grumpy. But the human condition is so much that we focus on that one person, right? Yeah. So I think, Luke, if I just what I love about my job is that we actually do get really good results for people, and quite often they're surprised. But at the same time, like I said, we stay in our lane, so we know if we can help somebody. At least to a certain degree. There's some cases where we're going, oh, man, this is a big deal. It's a serious situation. We really got to make sure we cross our T's and dot our I's. I'd say the fact that we're in a people business, ironically, serving people is the greatest opportunity. It's also my greatest frustration. Just the results that we get. And I am bent towards, I like the fact that we're doing it naturally, no drugs, no surgery. There's a role for that stuff, so don't, misquote me on that. I love the practice of modern medicine in Canada. You don't want to break your leg in Spain. Our doctors do a great job here. Our nurses are amazing people, But the fact that I get to see people's bodies heal and rejuvenate and restore without adding a chemical, without taking out a part, we add nothing, we just remove interference, and we get to stand back and get all the kudos for the body just doing what it's pre-programmed to do, which is to heal. That's cool, and just I get reminded of that 5 or 6 times a day. So yeah, like I said, if a chiropractor is grumpy, there's a problem. There's a big problem. Yeah.
When I started out, I kind of, viewed other professionals as my competition. And in a sense, they are, right? But I have a different view of it now. And I think that, we're meant to serve certain people. And certain clients are easy to deal with, and we love seeing them when they come in. And others are a little more challenging. And for me, over time, I tend to attract people that are compatible with my style. And that's great. It's good for them. It's good for me. So tell us a little bit about what makes you different from the average chiropractor and your perfect client. So who do you really love to work with, and what makes you unique from everybody else that's doing basically the same thing? And chiropractic's one of those fields that you really don't know what you're going to get. It's so far from the McDonald's cookie cutter Big Mac because it is really super diverse, and some of that frustrates me because it's not as regulated as I would like. But I'd say, what do I bring to the table that's unique? I study my butt off. Right now I'm doing a diplomat program. It's in neurology and spinal biomechanics. There's not too many people out there that even know what that means, let alone study it, the hours and hours that I do. Because I really want to be, when somebody comes in, I want to know that if chiropractic can help them, I'm studied up enough, I'm trained up enough that I can say, yes, today's chiropractic can help you, or sorry, no, this other profession or this other route is going to be what you need. I want to know. So that means I need to know a lot more about neurology. I need to know a lot more about biomechanics. I need to know a lot more about, functional fitness and just the things that maybe, look, what I want to be, I don't want to be a therapist. I want to be a doctor.
And there's a lot of people that are just kind of doing their craft. And hey, I'm not saying anything wrong with that, but your best, if you're in a doctor's office, the greatest tool in there is not their laser or their adjusting table or their x-ray machine, it's their brain. Right. And that better be packed full. Not that they're going to be perfect. So I think my greatest asset that I bring is, I am certainly not the brightest guy on the block, not even close, but, my folks raised me to work hard, heavy work ethic. So I might not have started at the top of the class, but I can look back across where my colleagues are that I graduated with, and I'm going, man, they kind of flamed out, But, I'm just kind of that diesel engine, just low, slow grind. And, 30 years later, from when I started university, I'm like, wow, I get a lot of calls from colleagues going, what do you do here? What do you do there? And I'm, disappointingly shocked at their level of post-education is basically been non-existent, So I'm a big believer in continuous, never stop learning. Are there seasons? Yeah, when our kids were young, I was just glad to show up to work with a smile, and get to work so I could get rested to go home, But now that our kids are older, our first graduated from high school this week. Man, I'm seeing the boatloads of time that I've got. I'm like, man, this is awesome. I'm going to be so smart, or at least in my mind, I'll be so smart. So yeah, that's probably the thing that makes us different. And the other doctors that I've got in the office, I hold them that same bar. They may not need to study at the same level to get their diplomat, but man, you've got to have a basic understanding of some of these principles that we're learning, because we are serving people coming right in off the street, And that's the thing with chiropractic is we're primary care, so you don't need a referral. So there's all sorts of wacky stuff that can walk into our office, from the cancers to people minutes away from having a stroke. You better know what that looks like. Get them to the emergency room, right? It's not to stay in our office. They need to get to the ER so they can possibly get their lives saved. So yeah, it's intimidating, but at the same time, it's incredibly rewarding when you get it right. Yeah.
So it sounds to me that if a young person was starting out in this field, you would advise them to learn all you can, be passionate about learning, have a great work ethic, and take a real personal interest in your clients. Would that pretty much sum it up? If I came to you and I said, hey, I'm going to go to chiropractic school, what can you give me for advice?
Yeah, and I'd say as chiropractors, we got to have pretty thick skin. Right. So if you can't handle the heat, and because there's some people with some pretty interesting views that aren't so happy about chiropractic, you just got to be able to roll with that. I know as a realtor, you guys would have no idea what I'm talking about, right? No, I'm being very sarcastic to Luke. Yeah, there's lots of professions like that. So you just got to know you're doing the right thing, and go for it. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, it doesn't matter whether you're a chiropractor. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Just engage. If you don't like doing it anymore, stop it. Choose something else. But engage. Be fully engaged there, because people need more people that are just real passionate about whatever they're doing, whether it's fixing your car or looking after nerve systems. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot now. Who do you know in the city of Kelowna that is a professional, basically work for themselves? They might be part of a franchise or a corporation, but they basically work for themselves. You find to be an interesting person that you would like to see come on this show in the future.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm going to break the rules a little bit, actually. He's a super interesting guy. He's actually with a nonprofit right now, but he stepped out of just a dream job with Apple Canada, kind of a young, up-and-coming executive, and he basically stepped down from that, which would have been, ultimate security for the rest of your life in a funky world and growing, and this was back, probably. Shoot, I've known him for 10 years, so it's probably been 15 years ago. So right when Apple was really on the rise, So Lawrence East is a guy that I have coffee with probably about every quarter, and he oversees a group, Metro Community is what his deal is. And they've done some really neat social programs. So he's trying to figure out how to partner with, entrepreneurs, and so, he's a guy he's so wise for a young guy. So he's probably 10 years younger than I am. And just, he just basically pulled the plug from corporate Canada. Awesome. And he's helping deal with some pretty serious issues here in Kelowna. If you're not familiar with Kelowna, we've got a pretty large, kind of marginalized community that really impacts sort of our downtown and a lot of those businesses down there. It's a huge problem. I know there's a lot of good people working on it, but it's a big one. So I'd say Lawrence East would probably be my first go-to guy. Yeah, okay. And I can put you in touch with him. Warning though, he talks more than I do. So it might be your longest podcast ever. So okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So if someone is interested in talking to you about your services or finding out more about what you do and what you offer, what is the easiest way for them to get in touch with you?
You can reach me directly through my email, Dr. J, so DRJ, just a small letter J, at lighthousehealth.ca. Or you can call the office and talk to one of my admin team, 250-870-9136. That's our contact info. And you can also just kind of poke around a bit on our website, lighthousehealth.ca. Got a big YouTube channel if you want to watch some videos on just health tips and those types of things. We've really tried to, what we can share with the community, we've tried to put online and get out to people. So, that's it.
Great. Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Dr. J. I feel like I've learned something today, and we all got to know you a little bit better on a personal level. So I want to thank you for your time and for coming on the show.
I just really appreciate it, Luke. Anytime somebody gives me an opportunity to share what I love, that's awesome. And, I wish you the best of luck with this podcast. I think the way you're going at it is great. You've got some interesting people, and I just hope it goes absolutely viral or whatever they call it these days. But I really hope you get some great traction with it because I think that's going to really help a lot of people. So thank you for your time.